I almost forgot about this. Tucker is now on Twitter with his new show, Tucker on Twitter, and this is going to be hilarious. Most of his his first episode is just him shilling for Russia.
Hey, it's Tucker Carlson. This morning it looks like somebody blew up the Kakhovka Dam in southern Ukraine. The rushing wall of water wiped out entire villages, destroyed a critical hydropower plant, and as of tonight puts the largest nuclear reactor in Europe in danger of melting down. So, if this was intentional, it was not a military tactic, it was an act of terrorism. The question is, who did it? Well, let's
Russia, the terrorist group that is invading Ukraine.
see. The Kakhovka Dam was effectively Russian. It was built by the Russian government, and it currently sits in Russian-controlled territory. The dam's reservoir
Just because it's in Russian-controlled territory doesn't mean that it belongs to Russia.
supplies water to Crimea, which has been, for the last 240 years, home of the Russian Black Sea Fleet. Blowing up the dam may be bad for Ukraine, but it hurts Russia more. And for
But how does it hurt Russia more than Ukraine?
precisely that reason, the Ukrainian government has considered destroying it. In December, the Washington Post quoted a Ukrainian general saying his men had fired American-made rockets at the dam's floodgate as a test strike. So
What, the dude, like one person like hit the dam and like put three small holes in it. It didn't blow up the dam, and that was in December a long time ago.
really, once the facts start coming in, it becomes much less of a mystery what might have happened to the dam. Any fair person would conclude that the Ukrainians probably blew it up, just as you would assume they blew up Nord Stream, the Russian.
But why would you assume they blew up Nord Stream? Um, and why would you assume that the Ukrainians blew up the dam when they need it?
Natural gas pipeline last fall. And in fact, the Ukrainians did do that, as we now know. It's not like Vladimir
Okay, did some intelligence report come out saying that it was the Ukrainian people that blew up Nord Stream?
Putin is anxious to wage war on himself. Oh, but that's where you're wrong, Mr. and Mrs. Cable News consumer. Vladimir Putin is exactly that sort of man, the sort of man who'd shoot himself to death in order to annoy you. We know this from the American media, which wasted no time this morning in accusing the Russians of sabotaging their own infrastructure. Bill Kristol, the man who once told us that Saddam Hussein was responsible for 9/11, immediately denounced Putin as a war criminal and even more savagely compared him to Donald Trump.
Well, yeah, Putin is a war criminal. He's invading another nation, killing innocent kids, kidnapping them, killing innocent people. How's that not like war crimes?
The rest of the pundit class made similar, clearly coordinated noises. Putin did it! Putin did it! And their reasoning was simple. Putin is evil, and evil people do evil things purely for the dark joy of being evil.
Well, yeah, that's what a lot of evil people do. I mean, look at Putin. He kills his political opponents with radiation all the time.
In this specific case, Putin attacked himself, which is the most evil thing you can do, and therefore perfectly in character for a man that evil.
Well, no, he's not attacking himself. He's attacking the Ukrainian people by using a flood.
That was their explanation. No one who's paid to cover these things seemed to entertain even the possibility it could have been the Ukrainians who did it. No chance of that. Ukraine, as you may have heard, is led by a man called Zelensky. And we can say for a dead certain fact that he was not involved. He couldn't have been. Zelensky is too decent for terrorism. Now, you see him on television, and it's true you might form a different impression. Sweaty and rat-like, a comedian turned oligarch, a persecutor of Christians, a friend of BlackRock.
Wow, looks like Tucker Carlson is getting pretty racist right here. Rat-faced, a persecutor of Jews? What is he? I mean, not Jews, but Christians. What is he even talking about?
But don't believe your own eyes. Actually, Mr. Zelensky is a very good man. The best, really. As George W. Bush once noted, he is our generation's Winston Churchill. Of all the people in the world, our shifty, dead-eyed Ukrainian friend in the tracksuit is uniquely incapable of blowing up a dam.
Shifty, dead-eyed? Like, wow, what is he even talking about?
He's literally a living saint, a man in whom there is no sin. That's why Lindsey Graham is so attracted to him. They're just two good people, hanging out together and being good. And like all good people, when they meet in person, they spend a lot of time talking about killing people and laughing like friends do. Here's the pair last week.
Free or die.
Free or die.
Now you are free,
Yes.
and we will be.
And the Russians are dying.
It's the best money we've ever spent.
Thank you so much.
No, it's
The Russian
Yeah, they're talking about Ukrainian people either fighting for their freedom or dying, because what is Russia doing? Invading the Ukrainian nation?
Russians are dying. It's the best money we've ever spent, Graham says. A smile spreads across his thin, quivering lips as he forms the words. He looks like a starving man contemplating a breakfast buffet. The aroma of death has aroused Lindsey Graham.
Though, if they were talking about killing LGBTQ people or Mexican immigrants coming across the border, Tucker Carlson would be extremely happy about it.
Thanks so much, replies Zelensky. He feels the same way. See, there's nothing dark here. Just two middle-aged guys celebrating the killing of a population. They don't seem like the kind of people who'd enjoy flooding villages or starting a famine.
Okay, no, they're not talking about killing a population. The Ukrainian people are fighting against Ukrainian military people. They're not going out and attacking random citizens and stuff like the Russian military is doing.
And in any case, who cares if they are? It's really not your business. Your job is to support Ukraine. Watch Nikki Haley, a Republican candidate for president, explain this principle on CNN.
A win for Ukraine is a win for all of us. And for them to sit there and say that this is a territorial dispute, that's just not the case. To say that we should stay neutral, it is in the best interest of America. It's in the best interest of our national security for Ukraine to win. We have to see this through. We have to finish it.
Yeah, because if Russia is able to take over Ukraine, Russia is going to try to take over other nations, our allies and stuff. And yeah, it's in the best interest of the United States to stop Russia from invading other nations. I mean, imagine if this was World War II and Tucker Carlson is like, oh, we shouldn't be fighting against Hitler invading all these nations. It's like, what are you talking about, dude?
See? It's very easy to understand. It is vitally important for you to support Ukraine because it's necessary for Ukraine to be supported by you.
Though it's funny how he refers to the Russian invasion as just a population, just innocent citizens trying to, live their life. Well, he will describe asylum seekers coming into the United States as an invasion force.
Your support is mandatory until it's finished, whatever it is, and whatever that means. So shut up and support Ukraine, or else you're in trouble.
No, nobody, well, she didn't say you're going to be in trouble. It's just, she says that it's in the United States' best interest to help the Ukrainian people against an invasion.
Back when they still taught logic, statements like this were known as tautologies. Something is true because it is. The more you repeat it, the truer it becomes. It's a self-reinforcing reality.
Yeah, says the guy who constantly uses tautology.
There was a time when tautologies were considered illegitimate arguments, not to mention hilariously stupid. Only dumb people talk like that. Now everybody in power talks like that. Diversity is our strength. Trans women are women. Zelensky is Churchill. It's all self-evidently true. Doesn't need an explanation, and don't ask questions. Sound familiar? Of course it does. That's the pap they're serving us day after day in steaming, lumpy portions. By this point, it's possible that American citizens are the least informed people in the world.
So he's talking about his own base right here, because it's the right wing that is the least informed people. Though it's funny how he's attacking his own base.
Your average yak herder in Tajikistan knows who blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. It's obvious.
What? How does he even know that? Like, what did he talk to some person in some other nation about Nord Stream? No, he's just making up stuff.
Does he think some skinny dude in a dress is actually a girl? Come on. That idea would never occur to him.
This idea would never occur to some random hypothetical person that Tucker Carlson has made up to fit his idea.
You've got to be lied to at full volume over a period of years in order to reach conclusions like that. And of course, we have been. The media lie. They do.
Yeah, Tucker Carlson, who is a media pundit who worked on the biggest mainstream media network, admitting that, yeah, he lies to people.
But mostly they just ignore the stories that matter. What's happened to the hundreds of billions of US dollars we've sent to Ukraine? No clue.
We didn't give them cash, we gave them excess military equipment that the United States wasn't using. A lot of it is older military equipment that we don't need, and we can see them being used to defend themselves.
Who organized those BLM riots 3 years ago? No one's gotten to the bottom of that.
What does that have to do with Zelensky and Russia? And that is just hilarious.
What exactly happened on 9/11? Well, it's still classified.
Wow, what happened on 9/11?
How did Jeffrey Epstein make all that money? How did he die? How about JFK? And so endlessly on. Not only are the media not interested in any of this, they are actively hostile to anybody who is. In journalism, curiosity is the gravest crime. Yesterday, for example, a former Air Force officer who worked for years in military intelligence came forward as a whistleblower to reveal that the US government has physical evidence of crashed non-human made aircraft, as well as the bodies of the pilots who flew those aircraft.
Really? Really? If that actually happened, he would be all over the news.
The Pentagon has spent decades studying these otherworldly remains in order to build more technologically advanced weapons systems. Okay, that's what the former intel officer revealed, and it was clear he was telling the truth.
Wow, so now Tucker Carlson believes that the United States has hidden alien technology and alien bodies? What? Okay, now he's gonna say like what Roswell was an actual alien craft that crashed?
In other words, UFOs are actually real, and apparently so is extraterrestrial life. Now we know. In a normal country, this news would qualify as a
Who's this whistleblower? Name him.
bombshell, the story of the millennium. But in our country, it doesn't. The whistleblower's account ran on a technology website called The Debrief, which you've probably never heard of. The Washington Post had that story, but decided not to run it. The New York Times, meanwhile, just pretended it never happened.
Okay, why don't you run it then?
On the front page of the New York Times website this morning, there were 5 stories about Ukraine, as well as 4 stories apiece about Donald Trump, trans people, and climate change, the usual lineup.
Wow, so he's mad that there was news about everything else, but this whistleblower? Is that why he made this entire video? To be like, the United States talks too much about the Ukrainian people and not enough about UFOs?
There was nothing at all about how an alien species is flying hypersonic aircraft over our cities. Not one word. So if you're wondering why our country seems so dysfunctional, this is a big part of the reason.
Our country is so dysfunctional because the United States won't admit that aliens exist? That's a weird reason for a dysfunctional nation.
Nobody knows what's happening. A small group of people control access to all relevant information, and the rest of us don't know. We're allowed to yap all we want about racism, but go ahead and talk about something that really matters and see what happens. If you keep it up, they'll make you be quiet. Trust us. That's how they maintain control. When Western tourists first started traveling in large numbers to the Soviet Union in the early 1970s, they found that many Russians had a completely warped understanding of the United States. They thought that Americans lived in grinding poverty, in a state of perpetual race war, and were desperate to flee to the freedom and prosperity of the Eastern Bloc. They thought this because that's what they had been told. They had no way to know otherwise.
Yeah, and Americans are always told that like communists are evil people and that communism just causes destruction of a nation and a bunch of other BS. That's why there was the Red Scare in the United States and during McCarthy era and everybody was being attacked for being communist.
The few Russians who understood what was really going on in the rest of the world had learned about it from listening to shortwave radio broadcasts, sometimes under the covers so the neighbors wouldn't hear. 50 years later, it is bewildering to consider the ironies here. We're the ones who live in ignorance now. The US government has managed to classify more than 1 billion so-called public documents. So at this point, we can't possibly know what our leaders are doing. We're not allowed to know. By definition, that is not a democracy. Yet it's fine with the media. Secrecy is a powerful tool of...
It's funny how he's like criticizing the United States government for having like classified documents, yet he doesn't care that, Putin does the same thing. He, worships Putin like some kind of democratic deity, and it's not even the case. Putin is like one of the most corrupt leaders you can find.
control. Stop asking how we got so rich. Here's another story about racism. Go eat each other. That's the program. That's how most of us now live here in the United States. Manipulated by lies, silenced by taboos.
Funny coming from a guy who manipulates his entire audience with lies.
It is unhealthy and it's dehumanizing, and we're tired of it. As of today, we've come to Twitter, which we hope will be the shortwave radio under the blankets. We're told there are no gatekeepers here. If that turns out to be false, we'll leave. But in the meantime, we are grateful to be here. We'll be back with much more very soon.
I just think it's funny how Carlson and other right-wingers have gone from like hating communist Russia to now worshipping Putin and Russia. It's just quite hilarious.